How can someone say your whole past is only debt, then act shocked when the past returns with receipts? Why did a lawyer walk into my night shift, say he had been searching for me for 6 years, and look at me like I was the key to a locked room? What I found in my adoptive mother's house was not old junk. It was the reason my life stayed small. My name is Aaron Pierce. I am 49 years old. I work nights at a gas station on the edge of town, where the streetlights flicker and the highway never fully sleeps. I did not plan for my life to look like this. I used to think hard work was enough. I used to think people stayed kind if you stayed steady. On most nights, the store feels like a small box of light. The shelves are neat because I keep them neat. The coffee machine hums because I clean it on schedule. The floor shines because I mop it twice, even when my back does not want to bend. I do these things because order helps me breathe. When life is messy, I make the counter straight. I am the one who says good evening to truck drivers and tired nurses. I am the one who hears small complaints about prices, weather, and broken phone chargers. Most people do not look at my name tag. They look past me, like I am part of the store. Some nights that is fine. Some nights it feels like being invisible. That evening started like any other. I signed in, counted the drawer, and checked the security screens. The parking lot had a thin layer of dust on the painted lines. A stray receipt moved near the door each time someone came in. The air smelled like fuel and burnt coffee. Around 10, my phone buzzed. I saw Lena's name, my wife. We had been married 11 years. The last year felt like a long slide downhill with small sharp stones under my feet. I let the phone ring twice because I was with a customer. Then I answered and kept my voice calm. She said she was nearby. She said she wanted to talk. Her tone was flat, like she already knew how the talk would end. I told her I was working. I said she could come inside if she wanted. I did not ask why she could not wait until morning. When someone wants a late talk, it is never about something simple. At 10:20, her car rolled into the lot. I knew the sound of her engine. I watched her through the glass. She sat for a moment with both hands on the wheel. Then she stepped out and walked toward the door like she was entering a place she did not like. When she came in, the fluorescent lights made her face look paler. She wore a clean coat and a scarf that cost more than my weekly groceries. Her hair was done the way she liked it. Lena always cared about looking composed. Even when her words were harsh, she wanted her image neat. She did not greet me the way she used to. She did not ask how my shift was going. She looked around, then looked at me, and her eyes tightened the way they did when she was measuring something. She said we needed to stop pretending. She said she was tired. She said she could not live like this. I nodded. I told her I understood she was stressed. That was my first mistake for a long time. I kept giving soft answers to sharp statements, hoping the edges would fade. A customer walked in and went to the cooler. I kept my hands on the counter and waited. Lena did not wait. She continued, like she had practiced the speech in her car. She said my past had nothing in it that helped us. She said my past was only debt. She said it was all my past was good for. She said she had believed in me, but now she felt foolish. She said she wanted a life with progress, not waiting. Her words were not loud, but the store was quiet, and sound carries in a small box of light. The customer at the cooler glanced our way. I could feel his attention, quick and awkward, like when someone notices a private moment and does not know where to look. I kept my face calm. I have learned that anger makes people feel right about you. If they expect you to break, they feel powerful when you do. I did not give her that. I asked her what she meant by debt. We did have debt, not wild spending, not carelessness. It was the kind of debt that grows when life hits you in small waves, a broken car, a rent increase, hours cut at work, then another cut. Then a job that says it needs fresh energy and younger faces, but it calls it restructuring. Lena did not want to hear details. She wanted a simple story where she was the sensible person leaving a sinking ship. She said I always had an excuse. She said I did not take risks. She said I was too calm, too careful, too slow. She said I had let life happen to me. I told her I had worked 2 jobs for months. I told her I had sold my tools. I told her I had stopped seeing my friends. I told her I had tried to keep our home stable. She said stability was not enough. She said she wanted momentum. Then she did something that made my stomach sink, not because it was dramatic, but because it was final. She pulled a small bag from her coat and set it on the counter beside the lottery tickets. It was a neat bag, not heavy. It looked like the kind of bag someone packs when they are leaving for a weekend, not when they are leaving a marriage. That made it colder. She said she was done waiting. She said she was leaving tonight. She said she would stay with her brother for now. She said we could talk later about what to do with the apartment. I asked her if she had already decided this. She said yes. She said she had decided weeks ago. She said she did not want a scene. She said she was being respectful by doing it calmly. I nodded again. I said if she felt she needed space, she should take it. My voice sounded steady, but my hands felt too large for my body, like they did not belong to me. She watched me like she expected me to beg. That was her real test. Lena liked control. She liked knowing she could pull a reaction out of me. When I did not react, she looked irritated, as if my calm was an insult. The customer came to the counter with a drink. I rang him up. My fingers moved the way they always did. Muscle memory. He paid and left quickly. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Lena leaned in slightly and lowered her voice. She said she had given me enough chances. She said she could not respect a man who could not change his situation. She said she needed to think about her future. I told her I would not stop her. I told her I did not want her to stay out of fear or pity. I said I wanted her to stay only if she wanted to be my partner. She looked at me for a moment like she did not know what to do with that answer. Then she straightened her scarf and picked up the bag. She did not ask if I was okay. She did not say she was sorry. She walked out. I watched through the glass as she crossed the lot. Her car lights came on. She backed out smoothly, like she had done it in her mind many times. Then she turned onto the road and was gone. For a few seconds, I stood still with both hands on the counter. The store felt louder, even though nothing had changed. The hum of the fridge, the distant sound of traffic, the soft buzz of the lights, the small sounds that are always there, but you notice them more when you are alone. I walked to the back office and sat in the metal chair. The chair squeaked like it always did. I looked at the wall calendar, a photo of a lake, too bright and cheerful for this room. I saw the date circled in red from a week ago, a reminder about a payment I had managed to cover at the last moment. I thought about how Lena talked about my past like it was a stain. She did not know much about my past. That was the strange part. She knew I was adopted. She knew my adoptive mother raised me. She knew there were no relatives who showed up at holidays with stories and photos. That was about it. Evelyn, my adoptive mother, liked to keep things tidy. Not just the house, the story too. She always said the past was private. She always said I should be grateful and move forward. When I was a kid and asked questions, she would smile and tell me some things were not meant to be dug up. As I got older, I stopped asking. Not because the questions went away, but because I learned how the room changed when I asked them. I learned Evelyn's silence was a wall, and pushing against it only hurt my hands. I sat there in the back office and tried to breathe. I told myself I still had work to do. I told myself bills still existed, even if my marriage did not. I stood up, washed my face, and went back to the counter. Near midnight, the store was quieter than usual. A few cars came and went. A man bought a sandwich and a soda. A woman bought a phone charger and looked like she might cry, then thanked me too many times. I nodded and told her to take care. People carry heavy things. You can see it in the way they hold their shoulders. At 1:30, the door opened again. The bell above the door made its small sound. I looked up, expecting another customer who wanted coffee. Instead, a man walked in wearing a neat coat and carrying a flat folder under his arm. He did not look tired like most late-night customers. He looked focused. He looked like someone who had a reason to be here. He walked to the counter but did not reach for anything. He studied my face, then my name tag, then my face again. His eyes were steady, not rude, just careful. He asked if I was Aaron Pierce. I said yes. He introduced himself as Grant Holloway. He said he was an attorney. He said he had been trying to locate me for a long time. He said he finally found a trail that led to this gas station. I did not laugh. I did not ask if it was a joke. I had no energy for jokes. I simply asked what this was about. Grant said it was about an estate. He said it was connected to my birth mother. He said she was no longer alive, and she had been gone since 2018. He said she had left me her estate. He said the value was $93 million. For a moment, the words did not make sense. Not because I did not understand them, but because my life had no place to put them. 93 million was not a number that belonged in my world. My world was night shifts, late fees, and deciding which bill could wait. I stared at him and waited for the next sentence that would explain the trick. Grant did not smile. He did not look pleased. He looked like someone delivering facts in a careful order. He said he knew it sounded impossible. He said there were records. He said the problem was that the person who had been expected to tell me never did. I asked who that person was. Grant looked at me for a second, then said my adoptive mother had been informed years ago. He said she had been given instructions. He said she was supposed to contact me, and she did not. My throat felt tight. I thought of Evelyn's tidy house and tidy story. I thought of her saying some things were not meant to be dug up. I thought of Lena saying my past was only debt. Grant asked if I could step into the back office where we could talk without the cameras catching everything. I looked at the empty store, then at the clock, then at the folder under his arm. I told him yes. I said we could talk in the back. I said I wanted to understand exactly what he was telling me and why no one had told me before. The next morning, I did not sleep much. My shift ended at 6, and the sky looked like thin gray paper. I drove back to my small rental studio with the heater barely working. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. My phone was quiet, which felt strange after the night I just had. I kept hearing Lena's last words in my head. Not the exact sentence, but the idea behind it. She saw my history as a weight, not as a story. She acted like I had nothing behind me except mistakes. The hardest part was that she said it with the confidence of someone repeating what she had heard from other people. I showered, made instant coffee, and ate 2 pieces of toast, even though I was not hungry. Then I left again. I went to a small diner near the highway that stayed open early for drivers. I liked the corner booth by the window because it let me think without feeling watched. I tried to remember when Lena and I stopped being a team. When I first met her, she said she liked that I was calm. She said her life had enough noise. She said she wanted someone steady. Back then, that felt like a compliment. It felt like a place I could stand and not fall. We met at a community event, a local fundraiser where people sold baked goods and raffle tickets. She was smiling in a polite way, talking to everyone, collecting small favors without calling them favors. I was helping the organizers carry boxes. She noticed me because I did not talk much, but I did the work. She asked me what I did for a living. I told her I worked maintenance at a manufacturing site. She said that sounded reliable. In the early months, Lena was warm. She asked about my day. She touched my arm when she laughed. She praised me in front of her friends for being dependable. If someone teased me, she would lean in and say I was the kind of man who did not need to prove anything. I believed her. I also did not have a loud life. I did not have a big family story to tell at parties. I was adopted, raised by Evelyn, and that was the full version most people got. Lena said she respected that I did not chase drama. I thought I was safe. After we married, things shifted slowly. Lena started talking more about what other couples were doing. She compared jobs, vacations, and houses like it was a scoreboard. She did it with a smile, but the smile had an edge. If I said we had to wait, she would say waiting was how people stayed stuck. Then Kyle became a bigger presence. Kyle was Lena's older brother, and he liked to speak like he was giving lessons. He had a louder job title, a louder car, and a louder way of taking up space. He would visit and talk about ambition, about how you had to push life, about how people respected results. When Kyle talked, Lena listened. She would nod and glance at me like she was checking if I was learning. I tried to keep peace. I told myself family influence was normal. I told myself it would fade. It did not. At small gatherings, Kyle would ask me why I was still in the same kind of work. He would say he was not trying to insult me, he just wanted me to think bigger. He would list the people he knew, the moves he had made, and the things he planned to buy. Lena would laugh softly and say Kyle was intense, but she would not defend me. She would watch me like I was taking a test. The worst part was how Lena changed her language. She stopped saying we and started saying I. She said she wanted more. She said she needed more. If I tried to talk about budgets, she would say I was making excuses again. I started working extra hours. I picked up weekend shifts. I took small side jobs when I could. I did not tell people because I did not want pity. I thought if I carried enough weight, the balance would return. Instead, the extra work became the new normal. Lena did not look impressed. She looked like she expected it. When I came home tired, she would ask what I planned to do next. She would talk about friends who were climbing fast. She would say she did not want to be the couple everyone felt sorry for. I remember one dinner with her friends where someone asked what I did. Before I could answer fully, Lena answered for me in a shorter way. She described my work like it was a temporary phase. Her friend smiled politely. I ate my food and said nothing. Later, in the car, I asked why she spoke for me. She said she was just keeping it simple. That was the pattern. She would keep it simple in public and complicated in private. In public, she wanted a clean story. In private, she wanted a man who could rewrite the story overnight. My adoptive mother, Evelyn, played her own role in this. Evelyn was never cruel in a loud way. She was controlled. She used silence, like a tool. When I was a kid, I thought she was just private. As an adult, I started noticing something else. She liked being the gatekeeper of information. She liked knowing things I did not know. When Lena first met Evelyn, Evelyn was polite and careful. She complimented Lena's manners and her appearance. She served tea and asked small questions. But after Lena and I married, Evelyn's tone changed toward me, not toward Lena. She would speak as if she was disappointed in my choices, even when I was doing everything I could. If I mentioned stress, Evelyn would say stress was normal and I needed stronger habits. If I mentioned money, she would say money problems came from lack of planning. If I mentioned my job being unstable, she would say I should have chosen better. One time, years ago, I asked Evelyn again about my adoption records. I did not demand. I simply asked if she knew anything I did not know. She smiled and said my past did not matter because she was my family. She said digging would only bring confusion. She said I should focus on building my own life. I tried to accept that. I really did. But something always felt incomplete, not in a dramatic way, in a quiet way, like a page missing from a book, and everyone pretending the story still made sense. As Lena's respect for me slipped, she started using that missing page against me. She would say I did not have roots. She would say I did not have a real foundation. She would say I had no family backing, no legacy, no support. She did not say it to comfort me. She said it to make her point that I was limited. Kyle fed that idea too. He would say people like me were safe but small. He would say Lena was wasting her best years. He would say she deserved a man with upward movement. Lena would not stop him. Sometimes she would even repeat his phrases later, as if they were her own thoughts. I used to tell myself that love could handle pressure. I thought if I stayed steady, it would calm the storm. But love does not grow in a room where respect is shrinking. The longer I tried to fix things with patience, the more they treated patience as weakness. That is how I ended up at the gas station. After the manufacturing site cut staff, I took what I could get. Nights paid a little more. Nights also kept me away from arguments at home. At first, I told myself it was temporary. Lena called it embarrassing. She said she could not tell her friends what I did without feeling judged. She said it made her look like she chose wrong. That night in the diner, I kept stirring my coffee until it went cold. I thought about the man who walked into my store and said he had been searching for me for years. I thought about the way he said Evelyn was supposed to tell me something important. I did not know what exactly was hidden, but I knew what it meant. Someone had kept the missing page on purpose. I left the diner and drove toward Evelyn's neighborhood, not because I wanted a fight, but because I wanted to see her face when I asked simple questions. I parked a block away and walked the last part. The street was quiet. The houses looked tidy, like they were all following the same rules. Evelyn opened the door after the second knock. She looked surprised, then annoyed, then composed. She asked why I was there so early. She said I should have called first. I told her I needed to talk. I told her it was important. I kept my voice low. I did not want neighbors watching through windows. She let me in and walked ahead of me like she was leading a guest, not greeting her son. The house smelled like lemon cleaner. Everything was placed carefully, as if the furniture had never been moved. Evelyn asked what happened with Lena. Word traveled fast in that family. I told her Lena left. Evelyn sighed like it was a predictable outcome. She said marriage took effort, and I always struggled with effort. She said I needed to face the consequences of my choices. I listened. I let her talk until she ran out of energy. Then I asked her a question that made her eyes change. I asked her if anyone had contacted her in recent years about my adoption, my background, or any legal matter connected to my origins. She paused too long. Then she said no. She said I was imagining things. She said I was looking for someone to blame. I told her I was not accusing her. I told her I was asking because a professional came to my workplace and said he had been searching for me for years. I said the man suggested someone close to me was expected to pass a message along. Evelyn's lips tightened. She said I should not bring strangers into my life. She said people took advantage of desperate men. She said I should stop chasing fantasies and focus on work. I nodded as if I accepted the warning. But while she spoke, I noticed the hallway. There was a folding table leaned against a closet door, blocking it in a way that did not match the rest of her careful home. It looked temporary, but it also looked like it had been there a long time. Evelyn noticed my eyes move, and she shifted her body slightly as if to block my view. I asked her what was in that closet. She said old things. She said nothing that mattered. She said the house was not a storage unit for my worries. I told her I understood. I said I was not there to search her home. I said I wanted clarity, not conflict. Evelyn looked relieved too quickly, like she thought I was easy to steer. Before I left, she told me I should not make things worse with Lena's family. She said they were social people and could be helpful if I stayed respectful. She said I should not embarrass them. I walked out and stood on her porch for a moment, breathing cold air. I looked back through the window and saw Evelyn moving toward the hallway before stopping herself. That small hesitation told me more than her words did. When I got to my car, my phone buzzed. It was Grant Holloway again. I did not answer right away. I watched the quiet street and thought about how many times in my life people had made choices for me without telling me. Then I answered, and I told him I was ready to hear everything in the correct order, and I was ready to do it the right way. The call with Grant Holloway stayed in my head all day. He spoke like a man who had said the same careful sentences many times. He told me he could not talk long over the phone. He said we needed a quiet place, in person, where no one would interrupt or overhear. He also said something else that felt small in the moment, but grew bigger later. He said I should not warn anyone. He said people who control a story do not like surprises. He said if I moved fast with emotions, I might ruin the path that was finally open. He said the safest move was to stay calm and let process do its work. I told him I understood. I asked where we should meet. He chose a simple place, not his office, not a fancy building. He chose the same highway diner I had been sitting in earlier. He said normal places make people less curious. He said he liked normal. When I arrived, he was already there. He sat with his back to the wall, facing the room. He stood when I reached the table, shook my hand once, and sat again. His folder stayed closed. His phone stayed face down. Everything about him said control. He asked me basic questions first. He asked my full legal name, date of birth, and the last known address tied to my adoption. He asked for Evelyn's current address. He asked if I had any contact with my adoption agency. He asked if I had ever used a different last name. I answered in short sentences. I did not try to impress him. I did not try to make it a story. I treated it like a checklist because that is what he wanted. Then he told me in plain words why he had come to my workplace. He said there was an estate plan. He said it named me. He said it had been active for years. He said the person who created it expected me to be located quickly, but that did not happen. He said the search had been slowed by missing contact links. He said someone close to me had received information that should have helped, and that person stayed quiet. He did not say Evelyn's name in an accusing way. He said it like a fact that had been confirmed through a trail. I asked him how he knew the person was close to me. He said there were communications that pointed in one direction. He said the process had steps, and those steps had timestamps. He said he had followed those steps and seen where the chain broke. I felt my jaw tighten. I kept my hands under the table so he would not see them shake. I did not want him to see me as unstable. I wanted him to see me as steady, because steady people get better outcomes. He told me another important thing. He said I should not assume money would fix my life overnight. He said money changes lives only when you build structure around it. He said people who hear big numbers often make fast mistakes. He said my job was not to rush. My job was to be precise. That was when the switch flipped again. Not anger, not revenge. Clarity. My whole life, people had spoken to me as if I was slow, as if I did not understand how the world worked, as if I needed to be pushed. But sitting across from Grant, I realized something simple. I was not slow. I was careful. Careful could be power if I used it correctly. Grant asked about my marriage. He asked if Lena knew anything about my adoption beyond the basic story. He asked if Lena had ever spoken to Evelyn about my origins. I told him Lena knew I was adopted. I told him Lena had met Evelyn and visited her many times. I told him Lena had always treated my background like an empty drawer, a place with nothing useful inside. Grant nodded once, like he had already expected that. He said people often treat unknown history as nothing. Then they panic when it becomes something. He said I should prepare for pressure. He said if certain people realized what was happening, they might try to rush me into decisions. He said they might want me to sign things quickly. He said they might try to create a version of events where they looked reasonable and I looked unstable. I asked him what I should do today. He told me to start a timeline. He told me to write dates, places, and exact phrases that mattered. He told me to save every message, even the ones that seemed small. He told me to stop speaking in long, emotional calls. He said if Lena contacted me, I should keep it brief and polite. He said calm words do not give people material. He also told me to avoid confronting Evelyn again until he guided me. He said some people become careful when they sense a shift. He said I needed them to keep acting normal. I left the diner with my head full and my stomach empty. I drove back to my studio and sat at the small table by the window. I placed a cheap notebook in front of me and wrote the date at the top. I wrote my name. I wrote the time Grant walked into my store. I wrote what Lena said in the store in simple lines. I did not add insults. I did not add feelings. I wrote only what happened. Then my phone buzzed. It was Lena. I waited 2 seconds. Then I answered. Her voice sounded softer than it had the night before. She said she wanted to talk. She said she did not want things to get messy. She said she was willing to be fair. She said her brother had ideas that could help us close this cleanly. I told her I was tired and I needed time. I told her we could talk later, but not now. I said we should both keep things calm. She asked where I was staying. She asked if I had told anyone about us. She asked if I planned to make her look bad. I said I had not told anyone anything. I said I was focusing on work. I said I did not want drama. Her tone changed fast. She said she had supported me for years. She said she did not want to end up stuck because I refused to cooperate. She said she did not want to involve outside people, but she would if I forced her. I said I understood. I said we could handle it respectfully. I said I had to go. After the call ended, I stared at my phone. The swing in her tone told me what Grant meant. It was not about closure. It was about control of the story. A few hours later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a family group chat with Lena's side. I had been in it for years and rarely spoke. Most messages were photos of meals and short updates. Now the tone was different. Kyle posted a message saying he hoped everyone was doing well and that change was part of growth. He added that some people resisted growth and then blamed others. He said he was proud of Lena for choosing herself. Nora, Kyle's spouse, added a message about how it was important to protect your future. She wrote like she was giving advice to strangers, not speaking about my marriage. Lena posted a short line saying she needed privacy, but she was thankful for support. Then someone else in the chat asked what happened. Lena replied that we had different goals and that I had not made progress. She did not use my name. She did not say I worked nights. She did not say I tried. She wrote as if I was a blank shape. I did not reply. I took screenshots and saved them. Then I wrote in my notebook. Group chat. Date. Public narrative begins. That week, there was a local holiday dinner at a rented hall. Lena's family went every year. I usually attended because it made things smooth. Even if I was tired, I would show up, smile, and carry plates. It was easier than refusing and becoming the topic. Lena sent a message saying I should come. She said it would look better if we acted mature. She said people were already talking. I told Grant about it in a short message. He replied with one line. He said I should not start a fight, but I could observe. He said observation was useful. So I went. The hall smelled like warm food and sweet desserts. There were folding chairs and long tables with paper decorations. People greeted Lena with hugs. People greeted me with quick handshakes and polite smiles. Some avoided my eyes. Kyle found me near the drinks table. He spoke as if we were alone, even though we were not. He said he had heard I was making things difficult. He said Lena deserved peace. He said I should not hold her back anymore. He said I should accept reality and act like a man who understood outcomes. I told him I was not there to argue. I told him I wanted everyone to enjoy the evening. Kyle smiled like that proved his point. He said I always chose quiet because I could not win loud. He said the world rewarded people who moved. I did not answer that. I simply nodded and stepped away. Later, during the meal, someone asked Lena about her fresh start. She laughed lightly and said she was focusing on herself. Kyle raised a glass and gave a short toast about courage. He spoke in general words, but the room understood what he was doing. People clapped. Some looked at me, then looked away. I sat still. I ate slowly. I did not leave in the middle of the toast. I did not stand to defend myself. I simply watched the pattern. The story they wanted was clear. Lena was brave. Kyle was wise. I was the quiet obstacle. After dinner, Lena approached me near the coat rack. She spoke with a controlled smile. She said we should talk about next steps. She said Kyle knew someone who could help draft something simple. She said it would be easier if I agreed now, while everyone was calm. I told her I would not agree to anything in a hallway at a family event. I told her we could speak later in a proper setting. Her smile faded. She asked if I had someone advising me. She asked if I was planning something. She asked if I thought I could suddenly become someone else. I told her I was still the same person. I said the only difference was that I was done being rushed. I said I wanted things done correctly. When I walked out to my car, the night air felt sharp. My hands were cold. I sat in the driver's seat and did not start the engine for a full minute. I looked at the hall's front door and the warm light spilling out. I listened to the muffled sound of laughter inside. I understood something then. They did not respect me because I had spent years trying to earn respect from people who only valued leverage. They did not speak to me like a partner because I kept showing them I would accept being minimized to keep peace. I drove back to my studio and placed my notebook on the table. I opened a plain folder and slid my saved screenshots into it. I wrote another line in my timeline. Holiday dinner, public toast, pressure to sign quickly. Then I wrote one more sentence for myself, simple and clear. I wrote that I would stop participating in any setting where I was treated like an object in someone else's story. I would not shout, I would not threaten, I would not beg, I would document, I would wait, I would use the systems that required facts. and I would do it without warning anyone who thought I was too tired, too quiet, and too small to respond. The next few days felt like walking on two paths at the same time. One path was my normal life: night shifts, cheap meals, quiet mornings. The other path was something new that I could not fully see yet. A path made of names, dates, and rules I had never been allowed to touch. I kept going to work like nothing changed. I rang up coffee and snacks. I mopped floors. I nodded at regular customers. But inside, I was listening for patterns. I was watching my phone more than I ever had. Not in a nervous way, in a careful way. Grant told me to treat everything like a timeline. So I did. In my studio, I cleared the table by the window. I set my notebook in the center. I placed a plain folder beside it. I bought a small pack of sticky notes and a cheap thumb drive from the same gas station shelf where we sold batteries. It felt strange, buying tools for my own life the way I bought supplies for the store. I wrote down the basics first: Lena leaving at the station, the exact time, her exact phrases as best as I could remember, Kyle's message in the family chat, the toast at the holiday dinner. Then I started adding smaller things that I used to ignore. A short message from Lena asking if I was getting advice. A missed call from Evelyn that came right after I spoke with Grant. A voice note from Kyle that sounded friendly but carried pressure. I saved everything. I took screenshots. I backed them up. I did not send them to anyone. I did not talk about them in the chat. I simply stored them. Quietly. One morning, I sat at the public library because I did not want to use my own internet for certain searches. I did not want strange ads and suggestions showing up on my phone later. I chose a computer in the corner and kept my face neutral. I searched for basic things first: adoption, records, how to request them, what information a person could access as an adult, what steps an agency needed, what the normal wait time was. I learned quickly that simple requests are rarely simple when your file has been handled by multiple hands. Then I searched for general information on estates and beneficiaries. Not about the money, about process, about how people are located, about what happens when a contact link is blocked. I did not need to understand every detail. I only needed to know enough to ask the right questions. When I left the library, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Nora from the family chat. She wrote that she hoped I was doing okay. She wrote that Lena was stressed. She wrote that it would be kind if I made things easy. I did not reply. I saved it. On my next day off, I went to the adoption agency. The building was small and plain, with a calm sign and soft lighting. The waiting room had old magazines and a water dispenser. I sat in a chair and looked at a framed poster about family and support. It felt like a performance, like the building wanted to appear warm while holding tight control. A staff member called my name. I stood and followed her to a small office. She asked what I needed. I told her I wanted to request records related to my adoption. I told her I was not trying to cause trouble. I said I wanted clarity about my own history. She asked for identification. I handed it over. She studied it, then typed into her computer. Her face changed slightly, the way a person looks when a file is bigger than expected. She said adult requests were possible, but there were procedures. She said there could be waiting periods. She said some information might be limited. She said she could start a request, but I would need to fill out forms and provide details. I kept my voice calm. I asked what details they needed. She listed them: birth date, adoptive parent name, the agency case number if I had it. I did not have it. I told her I had only the basics. She handed me a packet and said I could complete it there or take it home. I chose to complete it there. I wanted a timestamp. I wanted a record that I had requested it on this date at this time. As I wrote, I noticed my hands were steady. That mattered to me. It told me I was not falling apart. I was moving. When I finished, the staff member checked the forms and placed them in a folder. She said someone would contact me. She said it might take time. I thanked her and left without pushing for more. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and wrote one line in my notebook: adoption agency request submitted, date, time, staff name. That afternoon, Grant called and asked how I was holding up. I told him I was fine. I told him I was doing the requests. I told him I was not speaking much to Lena. He said that was good. He said I should keep communication short. He said if Lena tried to pull me into long talks, I should repeat one phrase and end the call. He said calm repetition works better than debates. I asked him what he needed from me next. He said he needed me to avoid direct confrontation with Evelyn. He said he understood I wanted answers, but he said timing mattered. He said a person who feels cornered starts to move things around. He said we did not want movement. I told him I understood. I asked if I should meet him at his office. He said soon, but not yet. He said he would schedule it at the right moment. He said for now, I should focus on 3 things: my timeline, my records request, and my boundaries with Lena. That same evening, Lena called again. I was at the gas station, standing behind the counter, watching the cameras. The parking lot was quiet. The highway was loud in the distance. I answered and kept my voice neutral. She said she wanted to meet for coffee. She said she did not like how things were sitting. She said she wanted to be grown about it. She said she had found a simple way to handle the apartment and make this smooth. I told her I could not meet that day. I told her I was working. I said if we met, it would be with a neutral person involved, so we stayed respectful. She asked who. She asked if I had hired someone. She asked if I was trying to scare her. I told her I was not trying to scare anyone. I told her I wanted everything done correctly. I said I wanted clear steps, not hallway pressure. Her voice became sharper. She said I was acting like I had power now. She said I did not. She said she knew who I was. She said she had lived with me. She said I was slow, and I always would be. I did not argue with the label. I simply said I had to go back to work. I ended the call. Then, for the first time, I noticed my own reaction. I did not feel crushed. I felt instructed. Each time she tried to rush me, it confirmed I was doing the right thing by slowing down. The next day, I drove past Evelyn's house, but did not stop. I told myself I was not there to prove anything. I was there to observe. Her curtains were open in the front room. Her car was in the driveway. Everything looked normal from outside. That night, Evelyn called me. I let it ring once, then answered. She asked why I was speaking to professional people. She said someone had contacted her. She said she did not like it. She said it felt invasive. She asked if I was trying to embarrass her. I told her I was requesting information that belonged to me. I said I was staying calm and respectful. I said I was not trying to embarrass anyone. Evelyn said I was being ungrateful. She said she raised me. She said she gave me a home. She said I was turning against her because Lena left. I told her Lena leaving was separate. I told her my questions were not new. I said I had asked before and been told not to dig. She said digging was harmful. She said digging brought trouble. She said some people did not want to be found, and I should accept that. I noticed the way she framed it. Not, you do not need this. Not, it is complicated. She framed it as danger. That told me the information had weight. I kept my voice even. I told her I would talk later, then ended the call. In my notebook, I wrote, Evelyn Call mentions professionals, says digging brings trouble. A few days later, I finally went to Grant's office. It was in a building with neutral carpet and quiet doors. The waiting room smelled like paper and coffee. There were framed certificates on the wall, but I did not read them closely. I did not want to build a fantasy in my head. I wanted facts. Grant came out and greeted me. He led me into his office and closed the door. He did not place anything dramatic on the desk. He spoke like we were working on a project. He asked me to explain everything again, in order. Lena leaving, the family dinner, the calls, Evelyn's recent words, the adoption agency visit. He listened without interrupting and made small notes. Then he told me the next steps would involve formal meetings. He said this would not be handled by casual talks. He said some people would want to negotiate fast, but speed was not my friend. He said timing and clean communication were my protection. He also told me something that made my chest feel tight. He said my adoptive mother's behavior was not unusual in cases where a person wants control. He said sometimes people convince themselves they are protecting you. Sometimes they convince themselves they are protecting themselves. He said we did not need to guess which one yet. I asked him what I should do about the apartment. Lena had stopped living there, but she still had things inside. She still had a key. She still spoke as if she owned the final decision. Grant told me to stop trying to solve it emotionally. He told me to treat it as logistics. He said I should not throw anything away. He said I should not make threats. He said I should keep notes and keep my tone neutral. When I left Grant's office, I felt lighter, not because the problem was gone, but because the path was clearer. I walked to my car and sat for a moment. I looked at the steering wheel and thought about how many years I had lived inside other people's moods. That week, Kyle tried again. He sent a message saying he wanted to help. He said he could meet me and talk like men. He said I was making things harder than they needed to be. He said Lena was moving on, and I should not be the reason it turned ugly. I did not reply. I noticed how his language shifted too. At the holiday dinner, he spoke like a teacher. Now he spoke like an enforcer. He did not say he wanted peace. He said he wanted compliance. At work, Mrs. Patel came in during a quiet hour. She bought tea and a small snack. She looked at me and asked if I was okay. Her voice was gentle, not curious. I told her I was handling things. I told her it had been a rough week. She nodded and said she had watched many people try to stay calm while others tried to push them around. She said calm is not weakness. She said calm is control. She said people forget that. I thanked her. After she left, I stood behind the counter and looked at the security screens again. I watched the door open and close. I watched cars come and go. Life moved like it always did. But my life was changing under the surface. At home, I kept adding to my timeline. I kept storing messages. I kept my replies short. I kept my face neutral in public. I did not confront Evelyn. I did not argue with Kyle. I did not chase Lena. I did the boring work that people underestimate. The slow work, the careful work. And the more I did it, the more I noticed something important. They still thought I was the same man they could rush, label, and guide with pressure. They still believed I would fold if they spoke loud enough. They did not understand that my quiet was no longer fear. It was preparation. The week before mediation felt quiet on the surface and heavy underneath. I kept going to work. I kept my face neutral. I kept my replies short. But every day, I added one more small step to a structure that no one around me could see. Grant told me to think like a person building a fence. Not a wall, a fence. Clear lines, clear gates. Clear rules about who could enter and who could not. He said most people lose because they argue about feelings while the other side moves pieces quietly. So I stopped arguing. One morning, Grant asked me to meet him near a bank branch in a part of town I rarely visited. The building was clean and modern, with glass doors and soft lighting. I wore plain clothes, nothing flashy. I wanted to look like myself. I wanted to look like a man who was not trying to perform. A bank employee greeted us and led us into a private room. The room had a small table, 2 chairs, and a screen on the wall. The employee spoke in careful, polite sentences. They asked for identification. They asked simple verification questions. They explained options in a calm voice. I listened. I asked only what I needed to ask. I kept my answers short and clear. I did not smile much. I did not act impressed by anything. I treated it like a job task. The employee left the room for a moment to get more papers. Grant looked at me and said I was doing well. He said people often get loud when they feel small. He said my calm was my advantage. He told me again to avoid any side agreements with Lena's family. He said if someone asked me to sign something simple, the answer was no. I said I understood. When the employee returned, they placed a few sheets on the table and pointed to places where initials and signatures would be needed later. They spoke about security. They spoke about steps that would happen in a specific order. They spoke about privacy and how some details could be protected from casual access. I nodded and asked what the next step would be after mediation. The employee gave a short answer. Grant added one sentence, very quiet. He said the next step would depend on what people admitted when the room had rules. After that meeting, I walked back to my car and sat for a minute before turning the key. I was not excited the way people imagine. I was steady. I felt like a man tightening bolts on a machine, not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted safety. That afternoon, Lena called again. I was in my studio, sorting papers into piles. One pile was general bills and apartment notes. Another pile was my timeline notes. I did not mix them. I wanted clear separation. I answered and kept my voice even. Lena said she wanted to talk before mediation. She said she did not like formal rooms. She said she would rather meet for coffee and handle it like adults. She said she did not want strangers involved. I told her mediation was already scheduled. I told her we could speak there. I said it was a neutral process and it protected both sides from misunderstandings. She paused, then asked if I was trying to punish her. I told her I was not trying to punish anyone. I told her I was trying to be clear. She said she had been clear. She said she had told me what she needed. She said I was making it difficult because my pride was hurt. I did not take the bait. I repeated the same line Grant taught me. I said I would speak in mediation, and until then I was focusing on work and logistics. Lena's tone shifted. She said her brother could help me understand reality. She said Kyle did not like how stressed she was. She said I should not push her into a corner. I said I was not pushing. I said the meeting was the meeting, then I ended the call. A few minutes later, Kyle sent a message. He said we needed to talk privately. He said he did not want trouble, but he would not let Lena be treated unfairly. He said I was acting like I had something to hide. I saved the message and did not answer. That night at work, Sam Ortiz came in early for his shift. He saw my face and asked if everything was okay. Sam was not nosy. He was the kind of person who speaks only when it matters. I told him I was handling a family issue. I said it was complicated, but I was keeping it calm. Sam nodded and said calm people sometimes scare loud people more than loud people do. He said loud people do not know what to do when they cannot pull you into a fight. I thanked him and went back to stocking shelves. In the next days, I focused on small practical tasks. I changed passwords on my accounts and wrote them down in a private place. I moved my important mail to a secure mailbox option. I checked my credit reports and made notes. I took photos of the apartment's condition, not to accuse Lena, but to have a baseline. I did not tell Lena I was doing any of it. I did not tell Evelyn. I did not tell Kyle. I kept my actions boring and invisible. Evelyn tried again, 2 days before mediation. She called in the late afternoon when she knew I might be awake after my shift. Her voice sounded sweet at first. She asked how I was doing. She said she was worried. She said she did not like seeing family problems become public. I told her I was fine. I told her mediation was scheduled. I said I wanted everything handled properly. Evelyn said mediation made things worse. She said it put strangers in the middle. She said it would embarrass her if people heard. She said I should cancel it and meet her at her house instead, so we could talk as family. I told her no. I said the meeting was scheduled and I would attend. Her sweetness disappeared. She said I was ungrateful again. She said she raised me and I was turning cold. She said I was letting outsiders poison my mind. She said I was making her look like a bad parent. I did not argue with the label. I simply repeated that I would attend mediation and I would speak there. Then I ended the call. After the call, I sat at my table and wrote a short line in my notebook. Evelyn call, asks to cancel mediation, says outsiders poisoning, and pressure to meet at her house. It was not dramatic. It was simple, but it was a pattern. The night before mediation, I came home from work around 6:30 in the morning. I showered, ate a simple meal, and forced myself to rest. I did not scroll through social media. I did not reread messages again and again. I told myself I had already saved what I needed. I could stop feeding the anxiety. When I woke up in the afternoon, I cleaned my studio, not because it mattered to anyone else, because it helped me focus. I lined up my shoes by the door. I laid out my clothes for the next morning. Plain shirt, plain jacket. Nothing new. Nothing that looked like a costume. I sat at the table with my notebook and read my timeline from the top. Not fast. Slowly. I checked dates. I checked what I wrote. I made sure I did not add feelings or guesses. Only events. Then I wrote 3 simple sentences on a sticky note and placed it inside my wallet. Not a speech, not a threat, just reminders. I wrote that I would speak calmly. I wrote that I would not react to insults. I wrote that I would not agree to anything outside the proper process. Late that evening, Lena sent one more message. She said she did not want to see me pretend in front of officials. She said she hoped I would not embarrass her. She said she still cared about my future, even if she could not stay married to me. I read it once. I did not answer. I saved it. Then, around midnight, Nora posted in the family group chat again. She said she hoped everyone chose kindness tomorrow. She said bitterness ruins people. She said it was important to let go and move on. Kyle added a short line after that. He said he would be present to support Lena. He said he would make sure things stayed fair. I looked at the messages and felt something settle inside me. They were preparing for a performance. They wanted the room to think I was the problem. They wanted to stand together and look strong. But the room we were walking into did not care about performances. The room cared about steps, order, and rules. That was the whole point. In the early morning, I drove to the courthouse area. The sky was pale and cold. The streets were quiet. I parked, turned off the engine, and sat for a moment with both hands on the steering wheel. I thought about the man I had been for years, the man who kept peace by shrinking, the man who tried to earn respect by over-explaining, the man who swallowed every sharp comment because he thought love meant patience without limits. I did not hate that man. He kept me stable when I needed stability, but he also allowed people to treat him like a tool. I stepped out of the car and adjusted my jacket. I walked toward the building with slow steps. I did not rush. I did not hesitate. Inside, the hallway lights were bright and clean. Voices echoed softly off hard surfaces. People moved with purpose, holding folders and bags. I saw Lena at the end of the hall, standing with Kyle. She looked composed. Kyle looked alert, like he was waiting for a chance to take control of a conversation. Evelyn was there too, a few steps away, speaking to someone in a low voice. She looked calm, but her hands kept moving, adjusting her bag strap, smoothing her sleeve, checking her phone. Small tells. I stopped a short distance from them. I did not greet them first. I simply stood still, breathing evenly, letting the moment be what it was. Lena noticed me and lifted her chin slightly, like she was preparing her face for the room ahead. Kyle watched me like he expected me to flinch. Evelyn looked at me with a tight smile that did not reach her eyes. I glanced down at my watch and then back at the door to the mediation suite. I did not speak. I did not signal. I just waited for the process to begin, because for the first time in a long time, I was not walking into a room to beg for respect. I was walking in to let the rules speak. We were called in by name, and the door to the mediation suite closed behind us with a soft, final sound. The room was plain. A table, chairs, a clock that sounded too loud, and a mediator who spoke in short, careful sentences. Everyone sat where they were told to sit. Lena took the chair closest to Kyle. Kyle sat like he owned the space. Evelyn sat with her bag on her lap, both hands gripping the strap. Grant sat beside me and placed his folder on the table, still closed. The mediator explained the rules. One person speaks at a time, no interruptions, no side conversations. Everything stays structured. Kyle tried to talk over the mediator once, and the mediator stopped him immediately and said he would be asked to leave if it happened again. Kyle leaned back and went quiet. The mediator asked Lena what she wanted. Lena said she wanted a clean end. She said she had carried the load for years. She said she only wanted what was fair, and she did not want me to make things hard out of pride. She said she was ready to move forward. The mediator asked me to respond. I said I also wanted a clean end. I said I wanted it handled properly, with clear boundaries. I said I did not want hallway pressure, family pressure, or fast papers pushed across a coffee table. Grant asked the mediator for permission to present information, and when the mediator agreed, Grant opened his folder for the first time in front of everyone. He placed a set of documents on the table in a neat stack, then slid copies toward the mediator. He did not slide them toward Lena first. He followed procedure. That detail mattered. Grant said there was a reason this mediation could not be treated like a casual breakup. He said a major estate matter had surfaced, tied to my birth family line. He said a plan had been put in place years ago, and that plan named me directly as beneficiary. He said the valuation was $93 million. Lena's posture changed so quickly it almost looked like someone pulled a string. Kyle's face tightened. Evelyn's eyes flicked to the folder like it was a threat. Lena tried to speak, but the mediator held up a hand and told her to wait. Grant continued. He said the timing mattered. He said the estate matter was separate from my marriage. He said the law treated it as separate property because of how and when it was established and because of the separation timeline. He said Lena could have her own counsel review it, but he was stating it clearly for the room. Lena said she did not understand. She said we were married. She said she had supported me. She said there had to be a fair share. The mediator asked Grant to keep it simple. Grant said the fair share conversation would be about normal marital property and normal division. He said it would not be about the estate because the estate had its own structure and protections. He said there would be no quick signing today that changed that. Kyle leaned forward and said this was not what anyone expected. He said it sounded like a trick. Grant did not react. He said there was more, and it explained why the search took years. He placed another set of documents on the table. He said that after the estate plan was put in place, an attempt was made to contact me through the address connected to my adoption records. He said the normal path included notifying the adoptive parent on file. He said that notice was received, acknowledged, and then nothing was passed along to me. Evelyn spoke up fast. She said she never received anything. She said she would remember a message like that. She said someone must have made a mistake. Grant slid one page closer to the mediator and said the room did not need guesses. He said the record showed delivery confirmation. He said the signature line matched Evelyn's legal signature in other documents. He said the dates were clear. Evelyn's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at me, not with warmth, but with a silent warning, like she wanted me to protect her from consequences. The mediator asked Evelyn directly if she had any related materials stored at her house, any letters, any documents, anything that could explain the gap. Evelyn said no. She said I was being turned against her. She said she had raised me, and this was how I repaid her. Grant placed one final item on the table, a photo print and an inventory page. He said that during lawful preparation for this process, items were identified and Evelyn's home connected to my origin file. He said sealed letters and identity documents were stored together, labeled, and kept out of sight. He said their existence explained the missing link. Kyle stared at the table. Lena stared at Evelyn. Evelyn stared straight ahead like she was trying to freeze time. Lena's voice went small. She asked Evelyn if it was true. She said Evelyn told her my past was just problems. She said Evelyn told her there was nothing there. Evelyn said she did what she thought was best. She said money changes people. She said she protected me from confusion. The mediator stopped her and said the word protected did not match what the documents showed. The mediator said the next steps were clear. Lena would be advised to get independent legal counsel. The mediation would continue only on standard marital issues, and Evelyn would be formally addressed through the proper legal channels because this involved withheld information and documented notice. Kyle stood up and said he was not going to sit there and watch this. The mediator told him to sit down or leave. Kyle hesitated, then grabbed his coat and walked out. Lena reached for her phone with shaking hands, as if she needed someone to tell her this was not real. Her phone slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a dull sound. Grant quietly collected the copies that were not meant to stay on the table, left the mediators set in place, and said we were ready to proceed under the rules of the room. And for the first time since Lena walked out of the gas station, no one in that space spoke to me like I was small.